Who better than a former Wall Street guy to talk about compound interest? But in this case, he isn't referring to money. Brian Pannuzzo discusses how stacking the little wins is what will eventually lead to big changes.
This is the No Excuse to Miss podcast.
Welcome to the No Excuse to Miss podcast. I'm your host, Scott Volkortson. This week's guest is Brian Pannuzzo. Brian is a former Wall Street trader turned nutrition coach who now specializes in working with men whose professional success may have come at a significant cost in their relationships, their marriage, and their families. Brian was able to recognize this in his own career and a few years ago decided to reinvent himself into who he is today. Welcome to the show, Brian. How's it going?
Oh, my man, it's so good to be here. So good to see your face and to talk to you, buddy.
Oh, it's good to talk to you. It's been a while.
Absolutely.
So let's jump into it. If you can give them a quick background intro of kind of how you got to where you're at now, from the Wall Street, and then we'll dive into it from there.
Sure. I'll be brief because it's a lot, but I'll be brief. A New Jersey kid, grew up just outside of New York City, just turned 44 years old a couple of weeks ago. I'm married 14 and a half years with two kids. I have a 12-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter. Hudson and Mila are my two kids. And up until about 2.5 years ago, which I'm sure we'll get into, lived predominantly my entire life in the New York City and New Jersey area, living 4 years at college in Vermont. I was a basketball player, played a lot of sports growing up, but I was a very good basketball player. I'm a big guy. I'm 6 feet, 6 inches tall, and went to college on a basketball scholarship. Followed a lot of the guys who were older than me on my team into a particular major, business and economics. I was a double major, from where I was, where I lived in the area of the country. New York City was the center of the universe. Obviously Wall Street and financial markets and the finance industry was a big part of that. And so, decided to choose a couple of different majors that ultimately shaped a career that I went into, and a life that I started to live, when I think about this, when I think back at 17 years old as a freshman in college, when I decided to study, business and economics and finance, I never had the next 23 years of my life in mind. And I don't think most kids do.
I don't think most of us do.
Yeah. And I've thought about this a lot. I'm not sure I'm pretty sure a lot of people stay within the niche that they come out of college and their major, right? And I evolved in and out of, different particular niches within an industry, but how many of us, make a decision at 21 or 20 or 18 or whatever, and sort of, I'm in air quotes right now, I'm saying, wake up 15 years later going, wow, I'm still here, and I definitely was somebody who said that. And for me, the problem, there was a lot of great things in my life. The problem was that life happened to me real fast. I started to make real good money in my 20s, and I got married in my late 20s, started to have kids in my early 30s. And I started to develop a lifestyle that, matched my income. And so I made a lot of money. I spent a lot of money. We had a beautiful big home. I was a member of a golf country club. We went on nice vacations. We had nice cars. Nothing egregious, but I never. It sounds like I don't want to sound like people certainly shouldn't be feeling sorry for me, but I never thought about what I was spending. Not because I had so much money that it was never going to run out. Just because my answer to everything was always I'll just go hustle and grind more and make more, and that was this rat race I found myself in. And, it wasn't exactly like the Wall Street movies that you see, but there was, some similarities. We were out multiple nights a week, having to entertain, having to be, part of a nightlife that supported your relationships on the desk at work and cultivated and nurtured your relationships. It was high stress. It was high pressure. It was sedentary. Certainly was not a culture that lent itself to health and wellness. And so, I say oftentimes my mirror, what I looked at across the desk was, when I was 26, was a 42-year-old guy, 45-year-old guy who was 50 pounds overweight, either divorced or on the brink of divorce, or didn't want to divorce his wife because he didn't want to cut her a check for half of his money. He got out of the chair. He limped for his first 10 or 15 steps. He made a couple $1,000,000 a year. He had back pain, joint pain. He drank 4 nights, 5 nights a week. He ate like shit. And that was like my version of success. That was what I looked at as like, this is what success is. And I didn't know it.
And by society standards, from the outside looking in, I assume they looked at that as success.
More or less, most people didn't see a lot of the things that probably were going on. So you see what's on the surface, just like what people saw of me in my life. What they saw of my life was, wow, this looks pretty amazing. I have a beautiful wife. I have two great kids. I had a nice home. I kept myself together. I was really good, Scott, at, as you know a little bit about my story. I was really good at kind of staying within the guardrails, right? So I never ended up in the ditch. I never, lost enough money gambling that I had to fess up to my wife that we had to move money out of one account into another. I always lost just enough that it was within like the kind of like fluid transactions of bank accounts and things like that. I never drank too much that I embarrassed myself or ended up in the hospital. I never hurt anybody. I never got into a car accident. I never got a DUI, things like that. I never had that embarrassing moment that I had to really look myself in the mirror and say like, dude, what are you doing? And so it prolonged because I had a lot of success that came with those costs that I was paying until, my mid 30s, 7 years ago, almost, to the day, my mom passed away in early January of 2015. And leading up to her death, she was sick. It was really difficult to watch her get sick and die. And I dealt with it the same way I dealt with everything else in my life. I was physically present, but mentally completely checked out with alcohol, drugs, and anything, narcotics, whatever I could get my hands on, I was doing on a daily basis. And there was another moment with my son where my son was 5 at the time. He was into Legos and he wanted me to get down on the ground with him and put Legos together. And I couldn't do it. My body wouldn't allow me to do it. I couldn't get on the floor. My knees hurt too much. My hips hurt. My ankles hurt. I had to get up on the couch and sit there. And that was one sort of reckoning that I had where I was like, what am I doing? Like I had sold myself this story that I'm an ex-athlete. I'm 6'6". Look at any basketball player look at Charles Barkley and Kenny Johnson on TNT when you watch the NBA and they're limping all over the place. You see ex-athletes limping all over the place. And so like I sort of, then I'm this Wall Street guy. I sit around all day. Everybody's unhealthy around me. I have this commute each way into the city from New Jersey. I had sold myself this bill of goods that like, this was my destiny. This is what I signed up for. This is the cost of doing business. And I didn't want that anymore. I didn't know if it was worth it. And then after my mom passed away, my behavior sort of stayed the same, which it's important to note that my behavior really wasn't any different while my mom was sick and died versus, the 15 years prior. Now, it was probably on steroids a bit during that time because I was really struggling, but it was a microcosm of like how I lived my life. I always showed up. I was very professional. I didn't miss a day of work, but I was never at my best. I never took care of myself. I never like really focused on the things that really, were important. And it led to a moment where I really couldn't ignore it anymore. My wife, Tasha, came to me and said, we have a 5-year-old and a 6-month-old. And so I'm not walking out the door because I don't want my kids to have a stepmom, but I'm not really sure about this. And I didn't sign up for this. And I want to let you know that. And that was a big aha moment for me because I did not see that coming. And that was the beginning of me making a lot of changes. I started physically. I lost a bunch of weight. I got into better shape. I thought if I looked better, my wife would, be in love with me more, which is kind of ridiculous, but that was my mindset. Fortunately for me, it worked because it opened up my mind to a lot of different things as I kept more promises to myself and made more commitments to myself. I also started to treat other people like her with more respect. I found this weird thing, as you know, called personal development in a lot of these new people that I introduced myself to. I sort of swapped vices. I started taking home nutrition podcasts to listen to and books to read instead of, quarterly reports and research reports and analyst reports and things like that. And I just found this passion for health and wellness. My mom died of a neurological disease. There's tons of connections between neurological disease and health and your lifestyle. And just started to make these slow and steady changes. And ultimately, after a ton of time and a lot of work, led to me leaving a career 2.5 years ago and starting something completely different, which we can get into. But that is the compact version of about 15 years of my life. Sorry.
Oh, no. I think that gives us a great background. And I can relate to so much of that because, like, when I first got into the whole personal development space, I was still gambling, probably drinking more than I should. But I almost like live these two different lifestyles. I would go to some of the events that you've been to, and I'd be one person. And then I'd come home and I'd be this separate person where I'd still be gambling and doing all this. And it wasn't until I basically just had a day of reckoning. I'm like, okay, I either got to choose this life or this life because they're not compatible. Almost felt like an imposter as I was kind of going through that. And my thing was like, kind of like you with gambling, it never really became a problem like from a financial side, but I would be missing out from being present.
Huge.
Because as you know, now there's games on every night. So even I'd be somewhere and I'd be like, I'm checking my phone. I wonder what that score is. I wonder what this score is.
Scott, I cannot tell you how many times that I had my phone in my lap at a dinner with my wife on a date night. And, I would just real quick, just go and look to the point where sometimes like I would pretend like I had to go to the bathroom or something. Just because I was curious what the score was,
And then at least for me at times, then it would set my mood.
100%.
Because if oh no, damn, I'm losing now.
Right.
I'm not the same person I was when I thought I was winning 5 minutes ago.
Sure.
Which to then led for me, okay, I'll just have another drink and I'll kind of forget about that. And they kind of worked hand in hand and it wasn't who I really wanted to be. So when you decided to make that decision that you were going to leave Wall Street, I mean, I can't imagine how that worked just from the standpoint of A, you were making a lot of money. B, the identity that it seems like you had grown into was that you were a Wall Street guy with the country clubs, the entertaining at night, all that stuff. So was it a bigger challenge to walk away from that lifestyle, the uncertainty about like where the money would come from?
Yeah, it wasn't a chat. The lifestyle was fine. I had shifted, out of the lifestyle.
Okay.
Sort of when you said two different versions of yourself, that resonated with me a lot. That was me during my first couple of years of transitioning from, unhealthy Brian to healthy Brian. I was two different people. I was out of the office me and then in the office me. I was unwilling to, say, nah, guys, I'm not going to get, Chick-fil-A with everybody. I'm going to go to the salad place. Or, when like it's like this unwritten tradition that if you buy, one treat, you have to buy 50 of them for the entire floor. If it's someone's birthday, you buy cupcakes for the entire floor. It's like, no disrespect to, Susie, the assistant, but I don't need a cupcake on Tuesday to celebrate your birthday. I'm just going to go over and say, happy birthday. Have a great day. Thank you for everything. I don't need to eat a cupcake at 2:00 on Tuesday. And that was,
and by no means am I disrespecting you by not eating the cupcake.
100%. So I had trouble doing those things. I had trouble stepping out of my comfort zone. I feared judgment. I feared the backlash. Remember, this is a very alpha male. And when I say alpha male, there were females, but they were also alphas environment. You were within earshot of 40 or 50 different people on a telephone call while everyone was working. Now there was noise level. So, not everyone could hear you, but certainly any, 15 to 20 different people at any moment in time could sort of gang up on you if they wanted to. And that part of the environment, actually, I loved and I really thrived in that locker room sort of mentality. I had a locker room as an athlete, then I had a locker room for 20 years as a professional. It's one thing I truly miss about what I do now and not having that. So I do cultivate that with a lot of my clients, because a lot of my clients are also ex-colleagues and friends and things like that. But I did have trouble stepping outside of my comfort zone and doing things differently for fear of being signaled as like, who do you think you are? Or look at this guy doing something differently, until, I just built up enough evidence outside the office that what I was doing was working. And I really built up the confidence. That's why I'm a big fan, as we've talked about before, these smaller decisions that we make compound interest, and like building up the confidence and the identity that you're somebody new, because it can be incredibly overwhelming looking way into the future at this person that you say you want to become, and then trying to take the actions today to become that person. And so I like to encourage people to create their own momentum, to create their own success. That feeds on itself like a snowball rolling downhill, right? You really start to get your rhythm. And at the end of the day, once you're moving in one direction, you're really difficult to stop. And so, I encourage people to be as committed as possible to what they're doing and not worry about it. But it's really hard to do so. To circle all the way back and answer, your question, I did not really worry too much about the money. I didn't think enough about it. I should have made, I should have had a more strategic plan personally. I probably should have.
The irony there of you being a finance guy.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
Saying that I did. That's what you had done for 15 years, saying I didn't really think about the money enough.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I did it for 20. So shame on me.
20.
Right? Yeah. And so, ideally looking back, hindsight's always 20/20, right? I would have continued to do what I'm doing right now, continue to build that like side hustle. I would have really looked at our expenses and said, okay, what's not necessary? What maybe, we're committed to right now. Not that this is a bad example because I've never been a car guy, but like, we have this $1,000 a month Range Rover payment. Do we really need that? When the lease is up, could I get a $400 a month Jeep? Things like that. Could I make strategic, longer term changes, structural changes to my spending, right? Make better decisions with the money that I'm making? Could I put it into different accounts that I don't even see it, where I adjust my lifestyle? That automated approach to savings that ultimately we just adjust our lifestyles to. Could I have hung on to the job another couple years just to bank, a couple more years of income while I still built, the side hustle? And at, 2 or 3 or 4 years down the line, had this real concrete exit plan. I cracked the window open and dove right through the glass, which, I guess like if you're looking at it for some, perspective, like I could see a reasonable scenario where I never would let go if I didn't force my hand, and so, maybe I had to rip the Band-Aid off, whatever the analogy is.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I think so many times we see a lot of guys that they're not, well, in your case, you were sort of happy with what you were doing and, making a lot of money, but a lot of times you see guys that kind of stuck in a 9-to-5 that they don't like, but they're afraid to take that leap, for so many different reasons.
Yeah. It wasn't eating at me. And that's a lot of guys that I end up working with now. And I think it really truly is a lot of men. Again, like I mentioned, you have this evidence to support that what you're doing, there are some things right. Like you haven't burned your entire life to the ground, right? So, your wife, or you and your wife are still married. You have a nice house, you have a good career, right? You're not that out of shape. You're just, maybe you put on 25 since college. Yeah, you have low back pain, but everybody has low back pain at 42, And so you have this evidence that the things that you're doing are working. And so you hang on longer. And so for me, with all of my vices and my problems, it was like, well, look at that guy. That guy went to rehab, That guy lost so much money that he had real financial problems. Like,
or that guy's divorced. I'm not that bad yet. My wife's still there.
My wife and I still have sex every once in a while. All of these things I think can be a dangerous place because you put off the day of reckoning. And I put off my day of reckoning for probably, 6 or 7 years at least. And which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Everyone has to go kind of down their own journey, on their own journey and figure it out. But I do think that's a dangerous place for a lot of men to be because, you can sort of close your eyes and keep doing what you're doing and wake up real quick. And it's 10 years later, and that happened with me for sure.
And so you talk about kind of like the environment, the people you're around. Is that part of the reason you made the move from the East to the West Coast? Or was it more you just thought you had more business opportunities with the coaching side of things out in California?
It was mutually exclusive. The leaving the career, and it just happened to time up kind of appropriately.
Okay, so it wasn't an intentional, if I'm going to get out of this career, I need to get out of this area.
There was some of that, but my wife lived here for 10 years before we met, and she had been looking for a reason to get back here. We went to go buy a home in New Jersey in the same town that we lived in. I jokingly say, like, the whole time it was double everything, double the price, double the taxes, double the acreage, everything. And I was, the whole time I'm chirping in her ear, like, I don't want this. This is just going to, entrench me more in this lifestyle, and I want to get out of it. And so I jokingly say I was sort of, chirping in her ear the whole time, trying to convince her from moving across town. And I convinced her to move across the country. And that the house fell through, and she was like, well, what about California? And I was like, okay. And then I woke up the next day and I went, shit, I decided I agreed to move to California. And it was just an opportunity to make a clean break. I could have looked for a job out here. There are jobs out here. I do have relationships out here. I could have prolonged it a bit, but I figured, if I'm really just looking for another 1 or 2 year bridge to this new life that I want to build, why not just go at it now? And so that's where I sort of sometimes have that, buyer's or seller's remorse, whatever the right phrase would be, of like, I wish I did it a little bit differently. If I stayed in New Jersey and New York, it would have been really hard to leave the career when I did. When we moved, it was just a good opportunity to make a clean break. And so most of my clients are New York, New Jersey, Connecticut based. Majority of my guys are still East Coast based. I have 4 guys in LA now that I get to see face to face, which is amazing. And I have guys all over the country. So, we speak virtually, predominantly either, FaceTime, Zoom, whatever, audio, walk and talks, things like that. But there was an aspect of, I want to get out of the familiar environment that I'm so used to driving around, seeing, like, I remember where I stayed out too late one night at a buddy's house there. There was some of that where I was like, I could use a break from this. I miss it now. So, I miss my friends, I miss home, but there was an aspect where I wanted to just make a bit of a clean break and start something new.
I was listening to your podcast the other day, and I heard you tell a story about how even I think your daughter, you said, was 7 years old, or is 7 years old.
Yeah, she's 7.
Yeah. Now. And you said even like the work that you've done on yourself and the person that you become now has even changed, like how she interacts with you and treats you. And so that's got to give you some validation from, like, because so many times when we go down this personal development road, it's hard to put like a quantifiable measure on it. Like, I was here, now I'm here. But to see your like 7-year-old daughter start to treat you different because of the person you are now versus, who you may have been 3, 4, 5 years ago, has to be like, okay, I'm on the right track, doesn't it?
There's no greater confirmation for me than that. That's a great point. My daughter is a unique individual. My wife and I often say that this isn't her first rodeo. She's been around before. This isn't her second. This is her second, third, fourth trip at doing this somehow. And we've sort of come to the conclusion that she's had a tough life in prior lives. And it took us 8 rounds of in vitro to have her. She was our 10th and final attempt at in vitro. We had given up hope. My wife was 99.9% certain that we were not pregnant after we had the procedure. They implanted, 2 embryos, and she started to bleed after that. Like, it was all signs pointed to us not being pregnant again, which would have been our last attempt. And then And then she got pregnant. And from day one, she was skeptical and had this like scrunchy face and was not happy with anything. Where my son is like, what was like wide eyed, like my son is just couldn't be a nicer, sweeter, boy. And, every parent, well, not every parent, but a lot of parents say that. It's true. He really is.
Yeah.
Daughter, I don't know. Not so much.
They like to test us a little bit more.
Absolutely. And so, she was really harsh with me. I convinced myself that because, she'd been around before, she somehow knew that I was a complete, a-hole in prior years of my life. And she would like verbally really undress me sometimes. And I'm talking as like a 3-year-old, bro, not like, this isn't an adult, like, taking me down. This is like a 3-year-old, like talking to me, and it like really affected me. And so, I've seen the last couple of years, maybe some of that's age, but the last couple of years, our relationship has, I can't even put it into words how much it's grown and how much it means to me to see, what we have now. Like, we are best buds. We are like partners in crime. We're best buds to the point where my wife, I have to like stop acting like a child sometimes, because my wife gets frustrated when it's time to settle down and like the adults act like the adults. Like I'm like still the kid. And so that's been, one thing that I can always point to. Like, am I doing this right? Did I make the right choice? 10 years from now, sooner, my son, 5 years from now, my son will be 17, he'll be almost off to college. My daughter will be 12. I'll still be the greatest man she's ever met, but I'm pretty sure she's going to want to spend less time with me than she does right now. And so I think we have it, especially as men, especially in the field that I was in. We got it all wrong. And this is not saying that everyone should go immediately try to change this, but from our late 30s to like we're 50, it is the peak earning years of our careers, theoretically, right? We've put in 15 or 20 years into the career so far. This is when we're supposed to like really reap the fruits of all of our labor. And this is when most of our kids are young, most of them are young. And I was always after this chase. Like I gotta have this much money in the bank by 45. I got to do this by my mid 40s. I got to do this by 50 because at that point, like it's over for me. I'm a dinosaur, And, now that I look at it, like when I'm 50, just turned 44, 6 years from now, my son's going to be gone. My son's going to be in college, literally going to be gone. 80% of the time that I will have spent with my son face to face in his life will be over in 6 years, which is scary. And my daughter won't really want to spend the kind of quality time with me that she does. I'll still be cool, but I'm not going to get the kind of quality time. And so why not, during those years, be as physically and mentally present with them as I can be? Now, I work my ass off. I grind. This entrepreneur thing, as you know, I don't need to tell you, is no different than working in a big corporate world. Yeah. Just as stressful, if not more. It's just as hard. It's just as like, it's everything, if not more, right? Because you don't have all the support of a big organization around you. Now, you don't have a lot of the bullshit that goes on with it, but, you don't have a lot of that support. And so, I realized that I can always go at 50, I can go hustle and grind and not work, like I can go make a ton of money from 50 to 60 and then do whatever the hell I want with the rest of my life. And the world has changed. We can be online, offering a product or a service or a program, so much more efficiently now than we ever could be. And so, why not take this time to split my time? Because that's effectively what I'm doing. 50% of my day, I'm dad. And the other 50, I'm working as tirelessly and efficiently so that I can be dad for the other 50% as I can on my business.
And if you can be 100% present during that 50% time with your kids, because I know I've been guilty of it. I think we all have been, where yes, we're playing the role as parent, we're being home, we're doing that, but we're not really there. Our mind is on work, whatever. So if you can, and it sounds like you're completely present when you're with them, or as present as we can be, which is pretty cool.
I do my best. And you put that very, you said that very well. Like, when throwing away all the other bullshit, right? I don't have games to check on. Do I watch sports with my son? All the time.
Yes.
As a buddy of mine, while we're having a beer, watching a game, go $50 on one team, $50 on the other. We settle immediately. Yeah, of course. But there's no more distractions like me running out of the room, going to check a bunch of scores, me being super disconnected because I'm like completely hungover. I mean, that happens a couple of times every once in a while, but nothing crazy. I'm just, you'd be surprised how much more you can get done when you're completely focused on the task at hand and not focused on anything else. It's hard to do though.
Yes. So as we're kind of getting in, this will be launched the week between Christmas, or this will be dropped a week between Christmas and New Year's.
Awesome.
Which for a lot of people is like New Year's resolutions and, a new me, all the different things that we hear, which make me laugh in some ways now that I don't do New Year's resolutions.
Yeah.
So let's get into what your coaching program is. I know you do some stuff with nutrition and different things, but how much of it is lifestyle versus nutrition? And then, since we're getting into that new time of year and a lot of people will be diving into it, can you maybe just give even a more background of what your program is and how people could even work with you?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. First of all, if you're listening to this, let's just say hypothetically on December 28th, don't wait for January 1st because January 1st is a Saturday. So whoever starts their resolution on a Saturday on January 1st, January 2nd is a Sunday. It's the weekend. Why are you going to start then? So let's be realistic. You're going to start on January 3rd, right? Most likely you're going to get through the first weekend, but there'll be NFL playoffs and the bowl games will be just wrapping up. And, you put a good solid week in and you have a tough day at work. When work finally starts to pick up, we all know that by the middle of January, most likely whatever you said you were going to do today when you're listening to this on December 28th or whatever day it is going to be gone. And it's going to be okay because you're going to be just like everybody else. So why, as you sort of alluded to, Scott, why do we ever wait for a date on a calendar to tell us that we need to do something? If you believe truly in your heart that you need to make a change and need to do something, why would you wait one more second than right now to at least take one small step to start to make a change? So you don't have to figure out how to overhaul your entire life, right? Today or by the end of January. You just have to start to do one or two different things. And you have to make a commitment to yourself to not stop doing those things. And as you get better at those, to add a few more. And like I alluded to before, when, I started to do some things and then create momentum, and then that created more enthusiasm. Think about back to a time of your life when you were successful, maybe in sports or professionally, you got a raise, you got a big bonus, you got a promotion, whatever it was. It created this feeling of satisfaction, of accomplishment, of achievement, right? You felt good about yourself. People praised you. What did you want more of? You wanted more of the same thing that you just got. And so why not take that approach in transformation in your life, whether it be with your weight or your physical performance, your ability to do something, maybe reducing your vices, maybe in your marriage, right? With your connection with your wife. And so instead of trying to go from A to Z, or sort of like the couch to CrossFit 7 days a week, as I like to say, create a little bit of success for yourself, create some momentum, right? Build this belief. You can borrow, I like to say a lot, you borrow the belief from somebody like me, or if you look up to Scott, you borrow our belief in you. Like, I believe that you can do it. I know I can do it. I've proved to myself. I've worked with enough people now to know and believe that they can too, even when they don't. Because I know that if they take certain steps and create certain momentum in their life, that they won't want to let it go. Most people, I would imagine, listen to this, are driven professionals. They're, alpha type males. They want to succeed. And so create that for yourself so that you do. Stop making promises that you know you're going to break. Stop proverbially throwing crap up against the wall and seeing what sticks. Because as you do that, as you break these promises to yourself, you are chipping away at your self-confidence. And so self-confident people don't break promises to themselves. People who have a history of doing so go, it's no big deal. I said I wasn't going to drink until Saturday. It was a stressful Wednesday. I'm just going to have a glass of wine. It's no big deal. You're right. It's no big deal. But how many no big deals do we have in our lives? I mean, I probably had 3 this weekend, and I'm pretty conscious of this stuff. And so I would implore you, I would beg you, I would ask you to just start to make a commitment to yourself today. And maybe that's just you start sketching out a plan for January. I'd love for you to start doing something. To work with me, it would be a conversation that we would have. What I do is I work one-on-one with men. We help you reclaim your entire life. And so, as you alluded to, Scott, there is nutrition coaching in there. There's some fitness in there. There's some movement. There's some changing of your habits. There's some reducing of your vices. We increase the connection with your life, with your wife, so that your life becomes what it is you want. Because most likely it's come at a cost or several costs. And so, what I would love for you to do is just go to my podcast, check out my podcast. I talk a lot about some of this stuff. It's called The Success Lift. If you like what I have to say, you can download a free guide at thesuccesslift.com, and you can learn more about me there. And working with me would be probably way down the line. Usually people have to pay a lot of attention to me for a long time before they decide that I can help them. So I have no expectations about anybody wanting to work with me. I just want people to take actions to start to help themselves. And if it's not me that inspires you, find somebody else that does. People are willing to help you get accountability in your life. You don't have to pay for it. Scott and I know very well that paying a lot of money for accountability really, really, really is effective. But
yes,
you don't have to. You don't have to. I will tell you that your chance of being successful goes up exponentially. But you don't have to. You can get a friend. You can get your wife. You can get your kids. Okay. Get people around you in your life that are supportive and that want to see you succeed, because most people, more people than you think, do.
And that's something for a long time. I always had like the lone wolf mentality that I can do this on my own, and I wouldn't talk about anything to anybody that was bothering me. If you asked me how things were going, they were always great, always perfect. Because any problems I had that I needed to deal with, I'm like, I'll deal with those on my own. And I had that mentality for a very long time. And it wasn't until I started breaking down some of those barriers and being willing to ask people for help, or just even talk to them and say, hey, this is what I want to be able to do. This is my goal. And I was able to start getting some accountability from other people, that I was able to finally start seeing some changes, whether it be quitting gambling or changing, my eating habits, whatever it might be. So like when you start working with people, what do you see as like the most common or the number one challenge, or in some cases excuse of why people can't start now, or they kind of give themselves an out before they even get started?
I think before I answer that, when you said the lone wolf, the wolf leaves the pack for 2 reasons. He's either exiled because of something happens, right? Or he knows he's going to die and he goes off and leaves. Both times, the same result happens. The wolf dies. The wolf cannot survive without the pack, right? Strength of the pack is because of all the individual wolves. The strength of the wolf is because of the pack. Men typically think that we need to go at this alone and put the weight of the world on our shoulders. Scott and I have been in the same rooms where alpha men, like super big, strong, tough guys, start to break down crying, hearing other guys talk about the issues that they have that they didn't think anybody else had. So we all think that our problems are unique. They're all as generic as hell. Now, do we have these slightly individualized, versions of them? Yes, of course. But we all are dealing with the same things. And so for you to be able to get around a group of people, either via a paid coach that has a group of people like Scott and I have done before, or a one-on-one coach, or a men's group, or a church group, or whatever, your boys at the gym. Like I went to the gym today. I had knee surgery last week. I hadn't been at the gym for a week. It was like I was on vacation. I came back. People were like, where you been? What's going on? It's like, I had knee surgery. Oh my God, you look great. Like I felt so damn good showing up there. Like my family, I have a family at the gym at 5 a.m. because the same people go at the same time. Okay. Going back to your question. Sorry, I got off a little bit on a tangent there.
Oh no, that's awesome.
I think people take on too much. right away. I think this is a perfect time of year to be considering that. Like, what are you actually going to accomplish in January? Are you going to go dry January? Are you going to do a celery juice to start every morning? Are you going to fast for a couple days? Are you going to, take on some crazy workout program? Like, none of those things are bad in and of themselves, but like, why not just create, some small success? If you've been digging this hole for yourself for the last 15 years, what on earth gives you the right to think that you're going to get out of it in 5 months? And some people have expectations to be even shorter than that. And so I've worked with guys that have put on weight for 6 months while we've been sort of, rejiggering things in their lives to make sure that they have earned the right to then go diet aggressively. And then they've gone on to lose, 30 or 40 pounds. I have a client right now that's doing all the right things and hasn't lost. He's lost a couple of pounds, but like he wants to lose 40, and so like, you don't just flip a switch on and have everything that you've been doing in your life magically go away and all these new things appear and you're really effective at them. I'm sure there's some people that have done that, but I don't know many. And I know that there are millions of others that fall into the category that I just described. And so if you just get a little patient, if you just understand that if you're in your mid 30s, in your mid 40s, shoot, even if you're in your mid 50s, you have decades and decades and decades left of your life. And why not spend a little bit of time building a strong foundation? Think about it from the analogy of a house, right? Like, the foundation gets built, there's a hole in the ground it appears to be months sometimes. And then all of a sudden, you don't drive by the house for 2 weeks and it's framed up and boarded up. Now the insides still take time, but like the framing and the boarding of the house get done in like 2 weeks. But there's a hole there sometimes while pipes are going in and stuff like that for months. So take some time and build your foundation, get some help, I'm a big fan of audits, right? People don't do audits on themselves because they're painful, because it exposes a lot of mistakes that we've made. Companies do audits, right? Companies report quarterly earnings if you're a public company. I used to trade, distressed and bankrupt companies. Those companies have to report monthly to their creditors and a monthly operating report, right? I went to a daily sales meeting every day, a research meeting where I take my notebook and my pen and we talk about ideas, right? Sales teams have weekly, daily meetings, things like that. These organizations have these communication and evaluation structures in place. Individuals do not. We throw our crap up against the wall and we see what sticks, and we see this workout video on Instagram, and our buddy told us he did this cleanse and he lost 25 pounds. He doesn't tell us that 2 months later that he put on 30, and we just continually get in this. A friend of ours, right, Mike DeSanti, likes to talk about, don't mistake movement for advancement, okay? A rocking chair moves, a Ferris wheel moves. Driving around in a cul-de-sac, you move. You're not advancing. Advance your life. Stop moving around. Us adults with families, kids, like, we're always busy. It's like a badge of honor. I'm busy. Life is so busy. Stop being busy. Start advancing your life. Start figuring out ways to advance your life. And sometimes that requires you to take a few steps back, requires you to do an audit, take some stock in what's going on in your life. And don't just do it once. Like, when you work with me one-on-one, we do it weekly. I encourage the guys to do it themselves daily. I do it daily. At night, the last couple of things that I do is get in my notebook and just go, okay, what worked today? What am I really proud of? What did I say that I was going to do that I didn't do? What did I do that didn't really, work for me? I feel like, and then what's the plan for tomorrow? If you do that over and over and over and over again, I'm telling you, like, put your blinders on, sort of this mentality of trust the process. You're going to wake up at some point in the future and go, wow, look at all that I accomplished, and then you're motivated, and then you go, give me more. What else can I do? And that's
you bring up, I was gonna say, you bring up a great point, like with the journaling too, because I would do that where I would write down what went right, what went wrong. and what I was trying to get better at. And at times I would catch myself. I would go back through the journal. I would look at it and I'd be writing like the same thing over and over again that I wanted to accomplish. And I'd almost have to look at myself in the mirror and be like, okay, either it's not a priority or I just have to completely, or I have to change this one thing to get there because it's not something I should have to write down every single week that I need to get better at.
Yeah, no, it's a good point.
Yeah. Back to your point earlier about at some points I just had to take action on some of these things versus trying to read about it, learn about it, talk about it, whatever. I just had to do it.
Yeah. Just go do it, man. Just go do it. Try it out. Don't, just release the expectation that this is the thing. It's going to work. Like, just go try it and then audit and then figure it out. Like, has it worked? If it's working and you should feed it and do more of it, do more of it. If it's not working, I don't know, evaluate your commitment, evaluate your execution. And if both of those things are there, then maybe it's the thing for you. Maybe it doesn't work for you. Do something different.
Maybe it's not as important as you thought it might have been.
Good point.
And something you said earlier that I thought was really good is like you talked about your back was bothering you, your knees were bothering you. And you're like, well, it's just because I'm in my 40s now. That's what happens. How many of the problems that you think, I don't know if I want to say problems, but how many reasons do we tell ourselves that we can't accomplish something or start something new because of what we've always thought about age? When I was young, once you were 40, it was over the hill.
Yeah.
And now I'm 46. I'm in better shape now than I was when I was 26.
No doubt. Yeah.
But I remember being a kid and I'm like, wow, 40 that's pretty well 1 foot in the grave. You're about done now.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Go ahead.
Keep going. There's so many, I was just going to say, there's so many of those things that I think the narratives we've been taught or the beliefs that we've been told that when you get to this age, like you said, you have to make all your money by 50 because you're a dinosaur after that. And now you look at it, you're like, well, hey, I can do this. And if I have to, I'll go back when I'm 50, when my kids are out of the house and I can still make a ton of money.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of these narratives people tell themselves either to avoid having to put in work. It's their like built in out, or it's just what they've always been told. And until somebody challenges that in them, they don't understand it.
Yeah. I think, look, I thought the same thing. If I knew how I'd feel at 44, when I was 24, like, I wish I could go. And again, Gary Vee says that a lot. Like, like if I could tell you, if I could go back to when I was, 25 and like know that how young I would feel at 45. Like, I feel great. Again, I just had a little knee surgery and I'll be back in a few weeks, but like, I'm as healthy and as fit as I've ever been, college athlete. A couple years out of college is when I started sort of my, professional life and physical decline. It's no comparison to me 10 years ago, 44 versus 34, 44 versus 28 or 29, even, to be honest. And so, look, it's a function of your commitment. What are you committed to? Are you committed to your body, on a daily basis? Are you committed to your energy levels, your sex drive, your mental clarity, your sleep quality, your marriage? Like, your habits are, your results are a direct reflection of your habits and what you do and how you execute. Now, I'm sure there are people who are like, they can't. Some people are just they put the work in, they don't see, all the results right away, but over time, I think your habits and results are undefeated, over time.
And the one thing I really like about your approach, from knowing what you do and seeing it on Instagram, is how simple you seem to make it. A lot of times we're the belief that if you want to get in better shape, you got to go to the gym for an hour and a half, and then you got to go on a 5-mile run when you're done. But you do this thing where you have like little notes, like around your house, or at least you used to, where you would do like little couple minute workouts here, movement, maybe a couple minutes of movement here, to make it much more realistic for busy people to be able to still get their goals in.
My wife has banned Post-it notes around my house, so I'm not allowed to do that anymore. I used to have like, you'd walk through a doorway, 5 push-ups. you walk like down to the kitchen, 10 squats. And she'd be like, will you get these goddamn Post-it notes all over the house? Listen, I'm a big fan, and thank you for that. I appreciate that. You do not have to convince me to not work out. I like to say, like literally, you do not have to convince me. We were in, I don't think you were there. It was our last meetup in Miami in 2018. We were at the one hotel.
Oh, I was there. I skipped the workout too.
You did? Oh, shit. So, I mean, like John and I looked at each other, and I was like, yo, you not want to work out? He goes, yeah, I'm cool. I'm like, let's go to the pool. So it's like, you don't have to convince me not to work out. I'm not this gym rat. I go to the gym for how I know it makes me feel and how I know it makes me perform. I am not, we are both close friends with some guys who love the iron, who like would spend hours and love to talk about it, and who just like live it, breathe it. And I respect that, but I am not that. I will never be that. I do not put me on a golf course with a vodka club soda splash of orange, and that is my happy place. All right. I do not need to be in a gym. All right. As long as I can bomb it. Okay. I'm good. So whatever I got to do that, that's what I need to do. But I do, enjoy going. And so for me, I found what works for me. What works for me is having, committed workouts, but also like, I'm a busy guy. I'm a busy professional. Up until 2 years ago, I could not craft my own day. I couldn't make my own magical day out, where I went and trained at 11 and then I got my recovery in, and, like I had to be at the desk at 6:30 in the morning. I worked till, 5:30, 6, 7 o'clock at night, sometimes later if I was out or whatever. And so I had these small moments where I was able to get stuff done. And so I sort of started to fall in love with this, again, concept of compound interest. It's not necessarily the 45 or 60 minutes that we spend in the gym. There are 23 plus other hours in the day. Now, you're also sleeping, hopefully, for a good amount of some of those. But what are you doing with your time for the rest of that time? How are you using it? And what if you just maximized those other 8 hours, or 9 hours or 12 hours? I would argue that might even be more important than the 45 or 60 minutes. Now, the people that we just referenced would, hear that and cringe, and I get it. And I think there's a perfect marriage between the two. I don't think it should be either or. I think a beautiful existence would be both. But how many times, Scott, has something blown up at your office one day and you run the joint? And so like, you can't go, I'm going to go to the gym. Well, maybe you can now because you built the gym at the place. But like, you can't just go, you know what, man, I got to go train. So I'll be back in 45 minutes. You have to get it done. You have to deal with it. And so what if you did 10 push-ups every 30 minutes or 60 minutes and got up? You had an alarm that went off every hour that just reminded you to move. And it was a principle of yours that, after lunch every day, you took a 5 to 15 minute walk, depending on how much time you had. I had this sliding scale. I worked in Midtown Manhattan. I had a message that went across my screen every hour. Brian, get up and move. So if I was in the thick of it, trading bonds, making it rain, I could just stand up, touch my toes, do a little stretch, move my back around, sit back down and get back at it. I could do a lap around the floor where I was just looking at my phone, sending messages, communicating with clients. I could go downstairs and just walk back and forth 45th Street between Fifth Avenue and Madison, right? Because I needed to be still close to the office. All the way that I could go all the way down to the end of 45th Street to the East River, look at the UN, come on back, because I had 30 minutes to kill. And so I let the moment dictate what I was going to do, but I had the identity and the principle that I was doing this thing. And so, I think that people, especially busy people, business owners, professionals, husbands, fathers, I mean, Jesus, we all are very stretched for time, but we all have 5 minutes here and there. We all have 2 minutes.
Yes.
We all have 3 minutes. And we've developed this idea that like, if you can't get your 60 minutes in, it's dead, right? And while 60 minutes might be better than 45 or 30, depending, you and I both know that might not be true, but let's just say that it is, right? 60 is better than 45. 45 is better than 30, but 20 is better than 10, and 10 is better than 5, and 5 is better than 0. So if you think about that on a daily basis, what can you do? Can you? Last night, I was doing some of my exercises while my PT exercises while I was watching TV. Everybody loves to watch TV. Why not do some body weight exercises? Why not do some stretching? Why not build in some of these new habits into some old habits that you like and may not want to give up, right? I told you, Scott, you can't watch TV at night. You and your wife got to do yoga instead. Like, screw off, dude. This is when we watch our show and connect, Or if I said, hey, man, not that all of us watch commercials anymore, but during a commercial, why don't you just do like a little bit of mobility work? Or every couple of minutes, just get up and do 5 squats. That type of concept, I think, is much more inviting to people. Again, creating some success. All of a sudden, your back hurts less. All of a sudden, you're moving around a little bit more. You don't have to, like I'm pushing into the chair, pushing to the chair to get up. You just get up using your hip flexors and your quads and your glutes.
Doesn't take you 15 steps to get the kinks worked out when you.
Correct. You're not limping. Yep. Again, I have the guy like pictured in my head. I see this guy getting up from the chair, and his first 10 steps down the road were limps. He was limping. And it's like, why didn't I think about it at the moment? Like, what the hell is wrong with that guy? Like, why would you want to live your life that way? And then all of a sudden, I'm that guy 5 years later,
Yeah. That was awesome. That last 5 minutes was awesome.
Rant, dude.
I love it. That was incredible. So I got one last question for you, and I may already know the answer to this, but I always feel like we are where we are now, good or bad, because of one event that happened in our life at some point. And many times, at least for me, I know when it happened, it was one of the worst things in my life that I could have imagined. But years later, it's kind of what I point to as like, that was I didn't realize it at the time, but that was the turning point in my life. And I know you referenced like your wife saying, this is, not working out. So can you point to something like that, or is it that?
Yeah, it was those 3 events. It was my mom getting sick. It was my son asking me to play with him. And then, I'm not sure I would have made a huge change, my son, with my body. I'm not sure that I would have behaved in the way that I did if my mom didn't get sick. I mean, if I'm really thinking about this and being honest, I think it's my mom my mom getting sick and passing away. And, I have thought about this because I have been asked questions like that. Obviously it's tremendously sad for me to have lost my mom, and I give anything to have her back. But, I do live with that. I do live with like, my mom is kind of watching me. My mom is, what good can I make of this? Can I live my life in a way that she would be incredibly proud and happy to see me live, to go on and help and impact other people and have other people not make the same mistakes that I did. So, if I'm really being honest, I think it's really that event, because that event caused my wife to sort of come and go, no more, because that was when my behavior, it may have happened a few years after that, but it would not have happened in that time. So,
okay. Oh, and I guess I lied. There is one more question.
Okay.
We were kind of what you said there. So we talked earlier that like from the outside, it looked like you were the picture of success. Great wife, kids, great job. And now, would you say that what you're doing now is there, and I assume yes, but a much better sense of fulfillment over success? Have you really been able to see the difference? Like you always hear people talk the difference between success and fulfillment. Would you say that you see that now with what you're doing, helping other men?
I do. It took me some time to understand it because I had a very black and white definition of success for me. It was how much money did I make that particular day, right? I had I
think most of us fall into that trap.
Yeah. And so, now, or at least in the beginning, I had I had a great conversation with a guy, I wrote a great email. I had a great post, and now it's now it's more clear because I have more experience and I know that the things that I'm doing impact people. And so my dog's going crazy on the mailman or something. Sorry. I know that what I'm doing creates results. I've seen what's happened to the men that I've impacted, the people that have reached out to me that don't even hire me. That's just as good. That's just as good. Don't hire me. Just pay attention and do some of the things that I ask you to do that I do every day in my life. and a year from now, hit me up and say, I did these things and here's what it's created. I get way more satisfaction out of that than I do out of you putting money in my bank account. And so, yes, I've replaced pure success with fulfillment, which also includes financial success for me. Now, is it the same that I had? Not yet. It will be soon, but not yet. But it also allows me to have this time as a dad, to create a connection in my marriage that I've never had in 14 and a half years. Do we have our ups and downs? 1000%. But are we on a trajectory where we're attempting to get better as a couple every single day, every single week, every single whatever? Yes, absolutely. And so, yeah, I mean, I've created, a great balance and sense of fulfillment in my life that I hope continues to grow.
Well, this has been awesome. I've been able to watch your journey a little bit, from when we got to meet each other a few years back. So super proud of what you're doing, and it's awesome. Where can people find you? What's the best place? I know you have the Success Lift podcast, and we'll put all this in the show notes, but where can they find you, like on Instagram, and what is your website?
Yeah, I appreciate you, buddy. Thank you so much. It's been so great I can't believe it's like it's coming up on 4 years where, you were already a part of it, but I made a decision to join a group of men and really helped turbocharge sort of my transformation and my growth. So you can go, the best place to go is thesuccesslift.com, www.thesuccesslift.com. That's where I put, a lot of my content. I'm on Instagram. I'm pretty active. It's Brian Pannuzzo, Pannuzzo. And I do have a podcast. We release a show weekly that Scott's been on. So go check that out. It's called The Success Lift. And I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we will talk soon.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.